Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to utilize math as a way to argue for faith and provide an argument for faith and an argument for the existence of God. And in this video, I'm going to be using the concept known as an infinite series or an infinite sequence, which is found usually in calculus 2. And if this might be a new concept, but if it's new, don't worry about it because I'm going to be explaining it, and it's honestly not that complicated, or I'm not going to be using it in such a complicated way. But I'll be writing out the function and then explaining it afterwards, so you guys can understand the gist of my argument. So basically, this basically says we're going to have a sequence. Okay, we're going to list the numbers starting at 1 and going up to infinity, and we're going to sum all the terms. Basically, we're just plugging in the value for x into this function, and we're starting x at 1 and going up to infinity. And so if we were to start with the sequence here, we can say that we can start off by plugging in 1 for x, and then it'll be 1 plus 1 equals 2. So 2 is going to be the first instant of this function here. And then, it's going up, it's going to be incrementing by 1. 3, 4, 5, and so on, up until infinity. And so basically, what I want to start off by saying here is that some people, some materialists might say that, I can't, obviously nobody can count upwards to infinity. Okay. That's not humanly possible. Maybe you'll get to 1,000, maybe 10,000 if you don't stop. But infinity, like, you probably won't even get to like a Google amount of number, which is 1 with 100 zeros following after it. So clearly, no human is going to be able to count up to infinity. But some materialists might say, well, I need to see it in order to believe it. And so they're going to be counting from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to as high as they can go. But they can't, but they won't be able to count up to infinity. So how will they know infinity exists? Like, infinity, now granted, infinity isn't a number, it's a concept, it's an idea. But how can we even prove that infinity exists if we aren't able to count that high? We have to imagine, we have to have faith that, first of all, that infinity exists. And secondly, we don't need to count, and this is my argument, we don't need to count all the way up to infinity manually, because and here's the powerful argument, because we can start to see a pattern here. 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we can see that it's incrementing from the instantiations that we have here, from the examples that we see, and this can be correlating to the instances that we see in the real world. From the examples we see in the real world, we can discern that there is a formula. We can discern that there is some master function, if you will. And so we don't have to continuously see up to 100, up to 1,000,000, up to Google. We don't have to see that. Because once we have the master function, once we have the formula, we can take that to its logical conclusion, which is infinity. And so basically, I know I'm using mathematics to argue for faith and the existence of God. But basically, how this relates, how this compares to the real world, is that we see examples of an attribute of God in the real world. And we can see patterns of these attributes in the real world. And from those patterns, we can discern, we can deduce a formula, we can deduce a pattern, we can deduce a master function. And if we have this function, we can thus take it to its logical conclusion in order to get the most perfect instantiation possible, the most perfect thing that ever can be, that ever can exist, based on the pattern that we discerned from what we have already seen. So in that case, we can attribute um we can have faith in the unseen from what we do see. And the materialists like to say that they need to see it to believe it, but I would rather say you have to believe it in order to see it.